Right, good morning and welcome to the Vox IT Assessments webinar. We are live and outside on our soundstage, so please forgive any disturbances you may hear in the background. We've had a few rogue holidays that started the morning off, but as I said, we are live on the soundstage. My name is Craig Freer. I'm responsible for managed services within Vox, and with me is Chris Bardenals and Craig Allen. Gents, if you can maybe just take 30 seconds and introduce yourself and your experience and your responsibility to the audience.
Thanks, Craig. My name's Craig Allen, also another Craig. I'm the manager of the advisory department, and the assessments team falls under my department. So we fall under the QWERTY division under the Vivica group. And we'll be talking more on my department's work a bit later.
Good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Bardenals. I'm the strategic lead for Azure services in Braintree as well as the Vox group. My primary responsibility is to get customers and help customers with customers in getting to the Azure space and the Microsoft cloud environment.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So one of the key pillars today in the IT environment is risk. Whether your strategy is cloud migration, enhancing security, insourcing, outsourcing, increasing skills, you need to mitigate risk. But mitigating risk is very difficult if you can't uncover risk. And that's really what we're going to be discussing today. The IT assessment process is something that we started a couple of years ago pre-COVID, and it's evolved from what was really a network assessment through to a 360-degree view of the entire IT estate. So this is going to take the format of a panel interview. We're going to have some questions with Craig and Chris, and we're going to uncover what we do in the IT assessment space, and especially some of the experiences, customer engagement, some of the success stories that we've done. We're going to start with Craig, and as lead on the assessments program, as I've mentioned, it's come a long way since pre-COVID. What I want to do is I want to unpack the different categories of assessments, the rationale for each, your experience, why customers are looking for assessments, what methodology you're following, and also take us through a high-level overview of what you're actually delivering in the space.
Okay, perfect. So I think a good place to start, and you touched on it just now, is the fundamentals of every assessment. The fundamental of every assessment is to gather as much information as possible. And in doing so, you enable key stakeholders within a business to make informed decisions based on the information that you've gathered and the risks that have been highlighted. How we generally do this is we engage with the customers. We have workshops with them whereby we understand their business, we understand the industry that they're in, and in doing so we also get an idea for what business challenges they're busy facing, what are their pain points, and that really helps us to focus on which assessments would be needed within the environment. And in doing so as well, maximize the value of those assessments and the information that we're gathering in those assessments. So just a couple of assessments that we do, how we generally start these assessments is we look at inside the end user devices. So we would look at their computers, the performance, especially with COVID that's gone on now with the distributed workforce. Companies have had to adapt to that distributed workforce, and without having to deploy expensive and most of the times intrusive software onto their machines to assess productivity and performance, we do these assessments on their machines where we highlight the performance of the machines, connectivity performance, and we can really isolate which users would have problems working from home and which users would benefit rather to be working in an office environment for productivity purposes. From there, we take a step out onto the network layer. So we look at network infrastructure, the equipment, the topology of the network, the configuration of that. Is there potentially any bottlenecks in this performance? And then any obviously risks associated with the topology and deployment of their network. Then we take a step out from there, is we're looking at a customer's perimeter security. one of the assessments where we can deploy a hardware device to assess the traffic going in and out of the network, which gives us an analytical insight into that traffic, actual user traffic, applications that they're using, productivity, that can also spin off to SD-WAN, but that's really looking at firewall. Outbound traffic as well. We've got some great assessments in terms of assessing traffic going outside, risks associated with that. And then once you take a step outside of the customer's perimeter security, there's security discussions that need to be had regarding the cloud, be it private cloud, be it public cloud, Microsoft 365 environments. Most companies now have adopted Microsoft 365, and there are certain risks with storing your information in those environments that customers need to be aware of. So we assess cloud environments. We give the customers a holistic view of their IT estate. And just touching on cloud environments, this could be Microsoft Azure, it could be VMware-based cloud, it could be AWS. We really take a holistic view at a client's cloud environment and assess the risks associated with all of that.
Craig, there's obviously a lot of information that you're collecting, and we actually do delve into the individual areas a little bit later in this discussion. The question is this something that's only available for large companies, or is this available for smaller companies as well?
Absolutely not. We've done these assessments, and we've done, over the past few years, we've done hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of these assessments in clients' environments, from smaller client environments of about 15 users, give or take, up to a regional footprint with thousands of users across the country. So it's really catered for small, medium to large businesses. We cater for all of that.
Security is obviously a big topic right now in globally, and you said some estimates take into account that up to 60% of South African companies have experienced some form of cyber attack in some shape or form. Tell us a little bit about the security assessment, the information you gather, and what the rationale is for it.
So like I spoke on just now, we do the firewall assessment, so perimeter security. It could be a firewall, there could be a lack of a firewall, where we identify risks. And again, we look at that analytical information that we get in from the traffic that's traversing the customer's network. We look at the analytics in terms of that. We look at live alerting, which could include compromised hosts inside a network. It could be attacks that's hitting the client's live IP address or whatever firewall they might have over there. And in terms of systems, intrusion prevention systems, what alerts are being generated and how that's associated to risk to a customer's environment. Then bringing that back in from perimeter security, again, is the network security. I touched on that in terms of bottlenecks and risks associated with the topology of the network and configuration risks, how configurations are done, how does that open up a network to security risks or potentially liability, how attackers would be able to move laterally within a network. And that could be inbound traffic or outbound traffic. They're both associated as risks within the client's environment. And then cybersecurity, health check, that would be the inbound, outbound traffic. We also use managed services to deploy these tools and monitor this on a continuous basis. We've had clients ask about that. Other forms is backup strategy. We speak to a lot of clients in terms of determining what they have in place at the moment, what their business requirements are. Some clients have a very low return to operation time, but they don't have a strategy or the services that will support that return to operation time. So we really do look at backup strategies and what is required to meet the expectations of the client and their business.
we've obviously seen a lot of growth in Azure in the marketplace right now, and a lot of it coming from the flexibility that it delivers and the consumption-based models. But some estimates say that companies are deploying this type of environment, up to 80% of them reach budget overrun. In fact, McKinsey actually released a report recently, and they estimate that over the next 3 years, there's going to be in the region of about $100 million of wastage in this particular space. Tell us a bit more about the Azure cost management assessment that you do.
Absolutely. So what we've seen on the ground from the engagements we've had with customers is at least 20 to 30% of customers are finding continuous budget overruns.
For sure.
And it's a massive risk to any business because they haven't budgeted for that. And where our assessments shine is we go into a client's environment and we assess their Azure environment as to all the resources that they're currently paying for. We align that with best practices. We look at cost-saving mechanisms like implementing budgets and alerts on those budgets. We look at implementing reserve instances. We look at right-sizing the environment to what the business needs.
It's been a very good program that we've run with our Azure customers as well, Craig. Yeah, I can really,
the benefits to the customer is absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So this has been a very successful assessment on our side, and that we found a lot of customers come back to us and seeing the value in the assessment and ask, can we do this on an ongoing basis? Can we do this? Can we look at this monthly? They're finding skill shortages that they don't have the skills to look at the environment and do that cost saving and cost control mechanisms within their business to assure that those costs within a cloud environment stay within what's been budgeted.
What I've seen a lot with the customers that do overrun their budget is that they don't have the insights into exactly what is causing the overrun on that budget. I know your tools provide that information as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
So the assessment speaks for itself, and the success of that, that we've had all our clients come back and seen absolute value out of these assessments. Great. And we've on average, I can say out of the engagements that we do, we save the customers at least 20% of their budget that they come to us with. We bring that budget down, and that's talking strategy as well. We find out what their strategy is, and we align their Azure deployment to their strategy. And in doing all of those mechanisms and methodology, that's where you find that you can really tackle the cost savings.
And Craig, this is a fluid environment. You can right size today, and DevOps can spin up an environment tomorrow, which absolutely shoots the budget out. Is this an ongoing process that customers can take on a quarterly, monthly basis, etc., so that you're continuously looking into the environment and right-sizing it on a regular basis?
Absolutely, and I mean, talking about DevOps, I think for CFOs, the DevOps environment is their nemesis. It's their worst nightmare.
It's the unknown.
The dev guys like to just spin things up, play with new features and functionality in a cloud environment, and then a lot of the times they sort of leave the office and forget to turn those services off. Yeah. So from a budget perspective and a CFO's perspective, a dev environment is their worst nightmare. But we see a lot of customers coming to us and asking, can we have these engagements on a monthly or quarterly basis so we can keep these costs in check and really track what the business requires and aligning their Azure services to what the business requires. And that's, the dev team really hates us when we start turning off services that they like to play with. Nice to have.
And Craig, are you able to benchmark a budget with a customer and proactively monitor? So, for example, any action taken on maybe the 10th of the month is actually proactively picked up. It's forecast out that's going to impact on budget and actually notify the customer. Is that it?
Absolutely. We can set up live alerts to notify customers on the day that a new resource has been spun up and the projected or the forecasted costing for the month would change from X amount to Y amount. And if that overruns the budget that has been set, there are alerts that are brought up, and key stakeholders like CFOs, CEOs, operation managers are notified of this.
We've seen this in real life example, especially with some of our customers we've engaged with you, is on those alerts, and specifically the 20% and the 40% thresholds that get met by probably the first 2-3 days of the month. There definitely is a problem there, and it can be addressed rather earlier than later when the costs have overrun already.
Absolutely, and it's a big thing. We're generating all this information. It's about what you do with the information, acting upon those alerts, having the skills to look at the environment, what's changed within the environment, and how that will impact the budget as a whole, and ensure that environment stays right-sized.
The research in South Africa is around 70% of companies will adopt a cloud strategy in some shape or form, whether it be private cloud, public cloud, etc. But interestingly enough, if you look at VM research, they're showing that up to 30% of all cloud migrations are actually failing, and customers are rolling back to the previous engagement. From a multi-cloud readiness assessment, what are you gathering, and how are you assisting customers to actually make the right decisions in terms of what can be migrated and how to migrate?
Absolutely, and I think that number is pretty accurate. What we've been seeing on the field in South Africa as a whole, that if you don't plan a migration properly, you're going to come into budget overruns. You're going to come into resource utilization that you weren't expecting. And I think the starting point of the assessment is we do actual resource costing. So we assess a client's environment as to what they have on premise, what's been utilized. If you look at CapEx, the CapEx versus OpEx discussion is most companies, when you buy a piece of hardware, a server, you need to factor in that server needs to still be applicable for the business needs in 5 years' time as you depreciate in that asset.
Not even accounting electricity.
Absolutely,
cooling costs,
and that goes into that total cost of ownership discussion that we have with clients. Is we assess all factors that impact an on-premise discussion, a hybrid deployment discussion, or a full cloud discussion, and that goes back to some of the other assessments that we do in terms of highlighting the risks. So we have that actual resource cost and engagement. We have a total cost of ownership engagement. We find out from the customer what best suits their business in terms of does the customer keep some of their services on site. We're seeing that quite a bit, where customers would keep mission critical, latency sensitive services on site as close to the users as possible, but offload some services to the cloud, be it Microsoft 365, SharePoint, whatever the case might be, or running that would be in a hybrid model. Or some customers who don't want the risk of any hardware on site, they want to fully move to the cloud with the redundancy that the cloud like Azure would bring to you, or a VMware deployment, AWS. There's so many examples of clouds at the moment.
So you're doing assessments across this multi-ICT environment. I mean, we're talking hardware, we're talking security, the Microsoft suite of products, we're talking cloud. Give us a real life example of how all of this pulled together with a particular customer, and how we remediated that environment.
Well, one example I like to use is a prominent law firm in the sort of Johannesburg, Pretoria region. They came to us about 3 years ago with a whole list of problems, pain points, business challenges. This was pre-COVID, and we started off with the assessments to find out what's running in the environment, all the risks associated with different services, try to address those pain points that they're having, implemented different services to either mitigate risks or give them redundancy. And that was an ongoing engagement with them over the span of a year and a half. And then COVID hit, and they had to adapt very quickly to a office-bound working environment, to that distributed work from home. And with some of the services that we implemented and that hybrid model, they were able to adapt to that very quickly with minimal disruption to the services, the services that they offer to their clients, minimal disruption to the users within the business. And we've done ongoing cost management discussions with them. We've had instances where we've brought down their overall ICT costs by at least 45%.
Sure. Yeah.
One of the more recent assessments is the hardware assessment. That's been brought in primarily because of the challenges that we're finding with work from home. And I don't think work from home is going away. I think we're going to be in a hybrid workspace for forever. Just give us a bit more insight into what you collect and why it's actually so important.
So that's one of the newest assessments that we've brought on board. Obviously coming from questions from clients that we found more and more clients have been asking us, can we get insight into the user environment that they're working in? Is that maybe not conducive, or would that impact on the user's productivity? So in the assessment that we do, we deploy a agent which polls the traffic within their environment, their work from home environment, at set intervals during the day to assess, is it maybe latency on their network? Is it within their home network? Is it their ISP that's possibly given a problem? Is it maybe not that? Is it maybe the hardware that's given them a problem? Still see customers with HDD disk drives on their computers, and that impacts on user productivity, especially when we spoke about the tools that users need to use at home now. The amount of Teams meetings or Zoom meetings, online documents, collaboration platforms, ERP systems, the whole works, what impact that has on those user machines, and being able to assess that and again make informed business decisions. Does that impact on user productivity? Can that user work in that environment? That's key to customers.
There's obviously a lot of software in the space that people can deploy. I personally find it quite intrusive. I don't want to be measured on my keystrokes and that. Is this type of engagement intrusive like that, or are you just collecting connectivity and hardware performance?
Absolutely not intrusive. I've seen software out there that requires users to sign certain legal documents before a customer can deploy the software onto their hardware. But it's very intrusive in terms of key loggers, productivity, looking at what they're actually, how much time they're spending on websites. And I try to steer clear away from that software. I do find it very intrusive. So the assessment that we do is very light. It's focused on hardware performance, connectivity perspective. We don't look at what the clients are, or the customers, those end users, are doing on those computers. We look at it from the applications that they're using, but by no means are we being intrusive and looking at the actual data that they're processing on that computer. That would open up a legal and liability discussion that I don't want to be involved in.
There's obviously a broad set of software tools that you use. You typically would take them in, deploy an environment, and that would gather the data. Is this something that you then take away with you, or is this these assessments available that you can leave the tools down and give customers this information on an ongoing basis?
So traditionally the assessments are once off. But over the years that we've been running the assessment, we found that a lot of clients are coming to us and asking us, the information that we're providing them is brilliant. They're finding value in that information. Is there a possibility we can leave these tools in place so that we can benchmark where the environment was when the assessment started off, and then apply methodology in terms of continuous improvement? How changes in the environment are increasing their risk, or how changes are being mitigated and reducing the risk in the client's environment and their IT state. So we've had a lot of clients come to us with that. So we are able to leave all these assessment tools in place so we can benchmark that and apply continuous improvement to their environment.
And then customers are welcome to engage with your team on a regular basis to unpack that data and get remedial action that needs to be done.
Definitely. Some clients want to meet with us on a monthly basis, some clients on bi-weekly, quarterly, biannual. Smaller clients wants to see this just on an annual basis. So there's no one size that fits all. So we handle it case by case, understand what the requirements from a client's perspective is, and we can tailor that to each client's environment.
Cool. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks.
Let's turn to the Microsoft portfolio of assessments. This is obviously one of the newer portfolios that we've introduced. Microsoft is one of the fastest growing product environments within the group. And Chris, let's switch over to you and give us a little bit more detail around the Microsoft assessments, why Microsoft assessments, and then I think after that we can go into a little bit of detail about actually what you deliver.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Thank you for giving us the opportunity on behalf of Braintree and on behalf of Microsoft to present the Microsoft assessments to you guys and to show you the value and the benefits of what we're getting through from Microsoft and Braintree. Why Microsoft and why the Braintree assessments through Microsoft? Number one, Microsoft is investing in their customers. They're investing directly into their customers, directly through a program which they launched a few months ago. It's called the Solutions Assessments Program, launched by the international, or what we call Microsoft Corp, all the way there from the States. And part of the program, they launched a few assessments that can be done through the program. One of their prerogatives, and why I'm saying customers are investing Microsoft are investing in their customers, is because these assessments and all the assessments under the program are free and fully funded by Microsoft. So you asked me the question, why Microsoft at this point in time? Exactly for that reason. They're reinvesting into their customers. They are the objective, let me say rather, also as part of the Solutions Assessment Program, is for Microsoft to assist Microsoft customers that are looking at maybe making the cloud move, making the move to the Azure space. Maybe they want to optimize their 365 environment. They could even be looking at concerns about security, whatever it may be that they've got. Microsoft have put together a package of assessments that are tailored to providing these customers with those insights and objectives to get that information and modernize and help digitally transform those customers in that environment. Now, why Microsoft? Part of the program and what Microsoft have strategized in the program is they've made available a set of highly skilled Microsoft engineers. These engineers, they specialized and they're skilled in the Azure space, so the Microsoft Azure architects, the 365 architects, the Teams architects, whatever architects that are available in the pool, not just from South Africa, Egypt, Dubai, Europe, the UK. These engineers sit with us in the assessments when we are doing the in progress with the customers, and provide insights, next best steps, strategy, roadmaps.
I've worked with some of those
Yes.
technicians from Microsoft, and they've blown me They've blown my mind. Their technical abilities is phenomenal. They're great people to work with, and the value of the information and what they're bringing in terms of, from a Microsoft perspective, giving those resources and those skills to us and to customers at the end of the day is phenomenal. It's been great.
Can't agree more. You know, I'm a tech at heart. I aspire to be on the level of these architects, you know, so I'm kind of jealous sometimes, and I wish I could give that to my customer, but but the Microsoft engineers are providing that level of insight, and you know, the strategies and the outcomes of the assessments. It's just, you know, the roadmaps is where I see the big value for the customers coming out of these Microsoft assessments. You know, and then just lastly on the Microsoft objective here with the Sales Solutions Assessment Program is it's a well-architected framework in which the assessments run. Microsoft have provided a lot of insight and a lot of thought in the definition, let me say, of this process from start to finish. And as our audience will maybe see on the screen now, it starts out with the identification of the customer. It will then, the customers can either come to us if they've got concerns about the infrastructure, they've got questions about migrating into the Azure cloud. How does that look? A lot of customers have got no idea what that process is. And the purpose of those assessments is to provide step-by-step landmark journeys to help customers gain those insights into the migration process. It could even be a security assessment from the Microsoft space. Maybe there's concerns, as I said earlier, that they want to know what they don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the big thing. What I'm getting from these assessments is rather know what you don't know than don't know what you don't know. You know. And so I was just going through that, and I think the infographic that's showed on the screen now is just it ends off with a qualified strategy and roadmap that's presented to the customer. And by no means is that a prescriptive roadmap or strategy that's defined to the customer. That strategy and roadmap is defined in the process of the assessment. So in the beginning of the assessment, we typically ask our customers with the Microsoft, what's your strategic outcome? What is your objective for this assessment?
Yeah.
Why is it what's the answer? What's the question and what's the answer? You know, we rather say what's the answer that we can give you regarding to the question. You know, and based on that interview process and the interaction with the customer, realizing the strategic objective of and the outcome that the customer wants, that strategy and that outcome and that roadmap with the landmarks specified towards it is presented to the customer, and the engagement there stops with Microsoft. And we're the partner with Braintree. From that point of view, takes the engagement further with the likes of your MIT, the MIT or the Azure Managed Services.
Yeah.
We work very closely together with a lot of the Azure customers, utilizing your cloud cost management module to realize that the costs don't go out of hand, and the likes.
So, Chris, assessments is obviously a broad category. Just give us a little bit more detail about the type of assessments that would be available to customers, and maybe share some successes that you've had.
Great. Yes. So, one or two benefits that I've seen, I'll say the most salient benefits that I've seen customers, and we haven't done thousands yet. We're aspiring to get to your level, eh?
You'll get there.
But the few hundred that we've done, in the value that I've seen come out from the customer base, number one is I was talking about it just now, and it's the roadmap, the strategy. It's the old mapper graphic or the infographic to say, customer, what we need to do is step one.
Yeah.
We start here. We evaluate the assessments done, define the landmarks, define the landing zones. If it's a security assessment, a lot of benefit that I've seen come out of that is actual items or actual vulnerabilities that have been identified in the assessment. And it says the report or the assessment report it's so straightforward. It says remediate this immediately.
Yeah.
Because this is where you are most exposed at the moment.
Definitely. And I think that it's important that proper tried tested and
Yeah.
proven methodology is used. And Microsoft, I know from my side, has spent a lot of time in developing that methodology, the
Correct.
well-architected framework as to how assessments are approached, developing the strategy.
Off the back of that, Craig, Microsoft are investing billions of US dollars in the security space, and that tooling, that investment is coming down to customers now in a real effect. And one of the conduits and the best ways to get your hands onto that security and the tooling is through this assessment. So I implore the audience, speak to your account manager or your sales solution specialist. Get your hands on an assessment and ask for it, from a Microsoft perspective, Then you ask what type of assessments we run.
Yep.
At this point in time, I see there's, we start out, let's paint the landscape. From a Braintree perspective, we operating in the three pillars of Microsoft. Just to give some background in terms of what Microsoft are focusing on heavily at the moment. Azure is number one. Most of you will see the messaging come from marketing and the Microsoft marketing going out to the market at the moment. Azure is number one. Azure is top notch. They are advertising their services, as I say. And then secondly, modern workplace. And modern workplace is your 365 assessment space, or let me rather say your 365, your business premiums, your teams, those type of product sets. And the third one that they're focusing heavily on is what they call the business application space, ERP, Dynamics as we call it in the Microsoft world. Your ERP, your line of business applications, your business applications, Power Apps, and those type of things. So let's start with the Azure space. Number one, which we've probably done second most of at this point in time, is the data and infrastructure assessment. Primary purpose of the assessment is to gather information, as you was alluding to on your assessment space as well, to get a picture of the current infrastructure, optimize that for an infrastructure or as a migration, and give the customer, and I'll keep highlighting this because I think this is one of the most valuable outcomes of the Microsoft assessments, that roadmap. The infrastructure and data assessment takes it one step further. If you've got SQL Server databases attached to that, Postgres, sorry, I might just get a little bit technical here, but if you've got a database platform, it's not just SQL Server based. It's looking at the MySQL, Postgre, MariaDB, the Linux type of database platforms as well. And the assessments on that space are looking at compatibility, and whether or not the existing tooling it can run, or your existing database platforms can run in the Azure cloud. Very, very handy one, especially if customers are interested in modernizing the infrastructure and the application space. Then what I'm excited about is the application modernization. So application modernization is one that's going to look at purely the modernizing workspaces, and and virtual desktops and the likes. Just moving on to the modern workplace. From the modern workplace perspective, the number one, as you see in the infographic on the screen, is the one we're gaining the most momentum and we're seeing the most value being gained from a customer perspective is the CSAT's cybersecurity assessment. A facet of this, which Microsoft have announced now recently, is that they are bringing in a POPIA compliance assessment as part of the CSAT.
Okay.
It hasn't been released as yet, but keep your eyes on the emails and the marketing coming out from Braintree and from Vox. Very, very excited about that POPIA one because I think it's locally applicable, and it's a very, very applicable assessment that can be done in terms of that. And then we can also offer virtual desktop assessments and surface assessments, like the hardware assessments that you guys do. And then primarily, I think the third or the second, probably the second or third one that we primarily focusing on at the moment is the Microsoft 365 assessment. Now I highlighted on the screen here for the audience. And I'm also very excited about this assessment. It's gained a lot of traction. The assessment looks at collaboration readiness. And collaboration readiness is how ready is a customer to take on a Teams environment, and maybe deploy it locally. It looks at the readiness of the customer for remote work. And as you were saying earlier, it's not just we've all gone back to the office. I think a lot of customers are going to be, we at Braintree actually still based at home. It looks at things like remote work, what's optimal from a remote working perspective, infrastructure enablement for that remote working, what's the best possible virtualization that can be done for that customer. Security posture is also included in the 365 assessment, as well as client experience. And client experience is actually quite an important one with this. What are your users deploying? How are they using the 365? Yeah. Are they actually using? Are you getting the return of investment on your 365 investment?
And I think something just to touch on that's something we've seen a lot is customers have the now Microsoft 365 was Office 365. They've got those packages, but do they really utilize all the features and functionality out of that and get the most out of what they're paying for?
That's it. And if you look at a basic 365 SKU like Business Standard or Business Premium, sorry, I'm talking product here from a Microsoft perspective. How much are customers utilizing their Teams SharePoint? Do they know that they've got a 1 terabyte storage component included in not just OneDrive but SharePoint as well? And this assessment, and specifically the 365 assessment, is looking at how customers are using that and are they utilizing it to its full effect. And as you say,
maturity is a good word for that, and their adoption to the modernized applications that's available under the licenses that they're currently paying for.
But then my next question, I think, would go to the two of you, and I think it talks nicely to the collaboration between QWERTY and Braintree. One of the components of the 365 assessment is security and utilization, and what we've seen has obviously spun off a new service which we're about to take to market, which is Managed 365, which is actually a QWERTY service delivered with Braintree in conjunction. Just tell us a little bit about what spun it off and the rationale for it, and why companies should be looking at something like this.
Well, from a managed services perspective, we had a lot of clients come to us and say, well, we've got this product now, we've got Business Premium or Business Standard, whatever the case might be. How do we best utilize this? Are our users actually using it to the efficiency level that upper management are expecting the users to be using it? And that's where we talk about the adoption of this. And then also highlighting risks, because that environment can change. People add new licenses, users come, users go. How does that affect the back-end configuration? Does an administrator enable a feature that maybe opens up the information from a peer perspective? Does that create a risk in terms of liability to a customer? So that from a managed perspective, we find that crucial to monitor and manage that environment carefully.
And the thing is, Craig, your question towards the QWERTY and the Braintree, so there's one aspect of deploying 365 services to a customer, whether it be a mail migration from whatever platform. There's an element of maintaining that. And from a QWERTY perspective, that maintaining that managed services is actually critical in maintaining whatever was deployed originally, maintaining security scores, maintaining the level of, if we migrated and we ended up on a 90% security score, that's at least maintained and doesn't dwindle down. And similar with the Azure managed services that we, from a QWERTY perspective, the same benefit. It's like who's looking at the cloud costs? Certainly, a lot of customers aren't looking at it the whole time. They've got other business objectives to look at. Have someone there, have the robot in the back, tell you you've spent 50% of your Azure budget in the first 2 or 3 days of operation. Somebody's done something,
Absolutely.
And that's where the criticality in the managed services component comes in. Yeah.
I think last question before we hand over to the floor and let people ask some questions. The theme today is about risk and how assessments can mitigate that. I always enjoy being on calls with customers and look at people's face when it's presented, because people just don't envisage this type of environment. Both of you have been involved in hundreds of assessments. Based on what you're seeing, how many of those assessments uncover medium to severe risk in a customer's environment, whether it's across the whole stack from Microsoft, the security environment, the network environment, the end user environment, etc.? What sort of percentage?
All of them.
100%. I don't think haven't come across a client that doesn't have a medium to severe risk in the environment.
Absolutely.
That's been identified. So I would say it's 100%. Yeah.
So you talk to that, so we get, out of the assessments, the Microsoft assessments, you get a secure score out of the assessment, and some customers get assessed and they're on 80%, because there's been a lot of work happening in the background. Still the questions, like there's one or two, I don't know, I can use any technical protocol that has been exposed here right now, but it's like I did not know that. And I think if there's a message in the assessments here from a security perspective, is the assessment's going to tell you, it's going to get you to know what you don't know. That's the key thing, yes. And I would implore, whatever assessment it is, get to know what you don't know, so that you're not exposed from that thing.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do is hand over to the floor for some questions. I think just before before we do, I think one of the first questions will be how much do the assessments cost and how do customers get access to it? So I think just to reiterate that from a Vox perspective, this is something we do as a value add for customers. We don't charge for it. It is available free, and reach out to your account manager and they will have the full process to drive it, all the information you may need on the different components of it, and that is the way to take it going forward. So let's start with the first question. Where do we find the secure score for our tenant, and why is it important to look at it?
I think that's aimed at the Microsoft.
Go for it.
So whoever asked the question, I didn't see who asked the question there. From a Microsoft tooling perspective, from the platform perspective, simply go to your portal.azure.com. If I have to use a URL there, go to Defender for Cloud, and from an infrastructure perspective, you'll see it right there in front of you. If you have activated the Defender tools, from a 365 perspective, you want to see your secure score there. Security.microsoft.com. And the dashboard or the landing page will present you with an immediate score. That's going to be where you're going to see 19%. This is prior assessment, post assessment. You're always going to have your grab on that secure score from security.microsoft.com. And you'll also see there on that secure score, there's a list of improvements and recommendations that you can follow from top to bottom. And I think there was a last point. Keep on looking at, because as you improve, you don't want, maybe I think the thing is, why you want to keep on looking at this, because these scores fluctuate.
Changes
they go up and down.
The changes happen within your environment.
Somebody installs something, and
absolutely, or administrator makes ticks a tick box without fully understanding the impact that might have in the environment, and your security score is shot.
Exactly.
Okay, the next question is, what do you recommend as a starting point?
Well, I think we touched on that, is assessment.
Call your account manager.
Reach out to your account manager. Get the process started so we can sit with you, we can understand your business, we can find those pain points and challenges, and we can recommend the assessments. We've touched on a platter of assessments that we offer, and which ones will best suit your business, and get the ball rolling on the information gathering.
Next question, what is the average savings you find when doing an Azure cost management assessment? And once you find these problems, can you fix them? Can you remediate them?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think once you identify the problem, you can put a plan in place to mitigate that risk or that problem, or put remedial steps in place to solve that problem. I wouldn't put a price on how much, but I would say a percentage on average, 15 to 20% cost savings that we're finding with our customers. Obviously, some customers we've gone up to the 50-60% mark, but it all depends on what they've deployed, what their business requirements are.
From the Azure cost saving perspective, definitely the cloud cost management aspect is key there. Running the assessment, the cloud cost assessment on the Azure side, and seeing if you're utilizing all the services in the first place. From an Azure space, and why these assessments save so much percentages on this, is because hidden storage disks that taken from one virtual machine to the next. So orphan thing, nobody looks at it ever again, costing you 2,000 Rand a month, which you could be using to innovate your business. Yeah,
definitely.
Next question: how long does a typical assessment take?
Well, how long is it? Sorry, go for it.
Thanks. From Microsoft's side, typical assessment, anything from 1 to 4 weeks, depending on infrastructure size, and what type of assessment. We find that the security assessments and the infrastructure assessments are best run over a 4-week period. Typically, infrastructure over month end when you're running commission runs and you're doing your month end reconciliations on your ERPs, so we can see the busyness of the infrastructure at that point in time. But start to end, not longer than 6 weeks from a Microsoft side. I don't know.
From QWERTY side and the assessment team that I manage, we can run assessments within 5 days. Depends on the assessment that you want to run. So it could be your hardware assessment that can be done pretty quickly. But we like to understand what your pain points are and tailor the assessments to that to get you that information from a customer and client's perspective, so you guys can make an informed business decision based on that.
Great.
And we're done.
Thanks, guys. I think we've run out of time now.
Is it?
So
Yes,
for everyone who attended, thank you. We appreciate the time spent with us. And again, any information you want, please reach out to your account manager. We're here to assist with any requirements you may have.
Thank you, everybody.